for Good is good, but does it reach the heights of the first movie? Well, let's talk about it. But before I start this review, I do want to say that I have seen the play, but I was also so young when I watched it that I don't really remember anything outside of the song Popular for some reason, so I will be looking at this movie with kind of a fresh set of eyes. But also, if you're new here, my name is Erin and I talk all things movies and TV, but really mostly movies, so if you're into that sort of thing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me, and while you're at it, hit that like button as well. And of course, if you've already seen the movie, let me know your thoughts on it down below in the comments, especially if you are a big fan of the original play. But without further ado, let's talk about Wicked for Good. So in case you don't know, this movie follows the now outcasted Elphaba as the Wicked Witch of the West as she fights to prove and expose the lies of the wizard. Jumping right into the good, and the first thing I have here is, of course, Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. They were once again the best part of this movie, and their chemistry in this one is just as good, if not better than it was in the first. And this movie, just like the first one, is at its best when those two are on screen together. That relationship between Glinda and Elphaba was the heart and soul of this film, and this time around it had much more emotional depth. And the reason for that depth is because of the internal and external conflict that they had with themselves and each other. For Elphaba, she is painted out as the villain even though her actions have good intentions, and Glinda finally has all that love and attention that she's been yearning for, even though all of that love is built up on lies. So she kind of has this purposeless feeling to herself, and we also get a lot more of her backstory that helps us understand her character well, and in turn that made where she ended up at the end of this film very satisfying. So we see these two play essentially two characters within their one role, if that makes sense. In the public eye, they were playing the characters of Glinda the Good and the Wicked Witch of the West, but when it was just them two together alone, it was Glinda and Elphaba. We see them battle with that the whole movie, and that leads to the conflict between the two, along with the whole love triangle they got going on with Fiyero, but that also makes those emotional moments between these two characters work so well. This film takes on a much darker and dramatic tone, and they really do turn down the humor compared to the first one, and you see that through their relationship. Other performances include Johnathan Bailey, who in my opinion had a lot more to do in this movie, and he was brilliant once again as he goes on his own little character arc. But I think the most underrated performance in this film goes to Ethan Slater as Bach. Without spoiling it for the people who have no clue what happens to him, he has a couple of really powerful scenes in this movie where he makes you feel what his character is feeling, and there was one scene in particular where he does this about halfway through the movie, and if you've seen the film then you probably know exactly what scene I am talking about. But he was phenomenal and absolutely deserves his flowers for this movie. Moving on to my next positive, and that is the set design, costumes, and really everything that had to do with this film visually was just as great as the first film, which makes sense because these movies were shot back to back, so it is a lot of the same sets and production. But the difference with this movie is that it takes place on a much bigger scale. I mean, it feels like we get to explore every corner of Oz, as opposed to that first movie where we spent most of our time at Shiz University. So we got to see a lot of new places and spaces that were just beautiful to look at, and they were able to create this world. Even though it is a fantastical world, it still felt real and lived in. When it comes to Oscar consideration for this film, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they won once again for costume and production design. But with that said, let's get into what, in my opinion, holds this movie back from being just as good as the first. The one thing I have for the so-so in this movie is the music. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some great songs in this movie. As Long as You're Mine, great song. No Good Deed, great song. For Good, absolutely chef's kiss. I loved every second of it. But overall, as a whole, this music just wasn't as memorable as the first. That first movie just felt like we were getting banger after banger with The Wizard and I, Dancing Through Life, Popular, What Is This Feeling, and of course you can't forget Defying Gravity, which I think is one of the best performances of a song that we have ever gotten in a movie. Everything about those musical numbers was just amazing, from the set design to the choreography to the singing. And I'm not saying that all of that wasn't good in this movie, because the vocals in For Good were absolutely incredible. But what I am saying is that I don't think I'm going to listen to this soundtrack as much as I did and honestly still do the first soundtrack. Finally, getting into the bad, and I only have one thing here, but in my opinion, this is the main thing that is holding this movie back from being as great as the first one, and that is the pacing and the story. Long story short, it felt like this thing didn't have enough story to stretch the full runtime, and that made this movie feel messy and choppy at times. Now, I am aware that they did have to add to this story to make it longer, and in my opinion, you can feel that. Once we got to the second half of this movie and this story started to intertwine with the events of The Wizard of Oz, it just felt like someone hit the super speed button and we sprinted towards the finish, and that just felt weird to me because I feel like there were certain characters and a couple of little plot lines that weren't all the way wrapped up. I honestly don't know what they could have done about that. This could just be one of those cases where the second half of this play, which I believe is only like 45 minutes, just doesn't adapt all that well to the big screen. But with that said, I will say if you watch these two films together back to back, that first film does make the second film better, but if you just watch this second film on its own, it won't be as good. So for my final thoughts, this is still a good movie that I enjoyed my time with. It's led and held together by its performances and takes on a much more dramatic tone that works. The visuals are also just as good as the first, and even though the music overall isn't as good, it still has some good songs, but it's the story and the pacing that holds this movie back from being great. So on my personal tier list, this goes in the good from me and is a movie that you should still see. Those are my thoughts on Wicked for Good. Be sure to let me know what you thought of the movie down in the comments, especially if you are a fan of the musical. But as always, be sure to like, subscribe, comment. God bless, and I'll see you guys later. Peace. Hey, thanks for watching to the end of the video. Be sure to subscribe, and here's some more cool videos you may like. All right, that's all I got. Peace.